Hi guys, it's Lakia again. What our discussion board topic for this week being why do you feel like people use offensive language? I really started to think about it and wanted to think about some of the reasons outside just the obvious reason of being discriminatory. I came up with a few. One of the first ones is that I think people may use offensive language because one, they just a lack of knowledge, that they just don't know that it may be offensive. Like for one instance with my friend, she didn't know that in the little people community that they didn't like to use the M word anymore. That it's offensive to them. And I remember we was having a conversation and she was talking about the one of the shows that came on and she called them the M word and I was like, whoa, 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 that's, you can't say that. And she was literally clueless about why. She didn't know that that word was offensive and that it was just not clearly correct, and it was just, they just seen that as something that was just mean hearted and mean spirited. So, and after I told her no, the correct term that they prefer to go by in a little people community are little people and not the M word, or and some may say dwarf, but correctness is little people. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you told me that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was even an issue." So I think that was maybe one of the first things that why people use offensive language. They just don't know. It's not out of maliciousness or anything. The second reason I think people may use offensive language is just from upbringing and just learned behaviors. I know I can use, for this is for myself, that growing up, like words like fad or words like stupid, they weren't seen as, I knew they were negative words, but calling someone that, or even in a joking manner, it just wasn't seen. I wasn't seen as an offensive. Even like now, I can see with like my son, if he eats a lot, his belly's big, and I poke, oh, you're so fat. Look at that fat belly, not thinking that I'm teaching him that that's a negative thing, and that you can say that if you see someone that like that's offensive. But I am passing that on to my son because in my family it wasn't a big deal to say that. But there are people that are overweight that are very sensitive to that, and that is offensive to them, just using the word fat or saying, pointing and laughing, saying you're big belly, having a big belly and things, that's offensive to them. Yet I'm doing it as an adult and teaching my son that, which is teaching the next generation. The next reason I feel people use offensive language, unlike the first reason I said of the lack of knowledge and not trying to be malicious, is the opposite of, it is trying to be malicious, trying to be hurtful, and using it in a negative way to actually harm or hurt someone. We all know that there are people out here, whether it's being having racism or being racist, or having issues with people's lifestyle of like sexual orientation or gender role identification. There's a lot of things, or where you're from. There's a lot of different ways you can discriminate towards somebody, and unfortunately there are words, or having words that are come up or been established to describe different communities that are negative, and people do use those words, usually out of hate and out of malice, and it's to be hurtful. We all know that the whole saying sticks and stones, but it is true, sometimes words can hurt more than actual physical abuse, and it's not illegal to say. You can say what you want. So I think that's just a way of people being hateful and getting out their real intent. And also sometimes people just don't have the intelligence to be able to discuss things um, in a way that's, you can still get your point across without just being discriminatory and nasty. So the first thing is to fall back to those negative inflammatory words that that can hurt a community, because those can cut deep. And that, well, it's not illegal, it's not like putting your hands on somebody. You can just think about it in your everyday life, even with, not even talking about race, if you just talk about just the male and females. If sometimes, I've seen several times, especially on college campuses, if a guy wants to say something to a girl and she's not responsive, what's the first word he's going to call her? okay, you be, stuff like that, because he knows it may be that his ego is hurt, his pride is hurt, things like that. So the first thing that you want to do is kind of defend yourself and make yourself put up a barrier and defense mechanism, which is another reason they use it, and make yourself feel better by using those terms. I think in that case, that's the worst type, not like the worst reason, excuse me, is to on purpose try to hurt someone and use the N word or use the F word for with dealing with sexual orientation. I think those are some of the worst times to be able to do that, is to hurt someone. It's like we have to really try to come up with some solution as counselors, which I will discuss a little bit later. And the fourth reason that I feel like people use the that type of language, like we was reading a text and made me think about it, is taking back the power of the word. So like I have a colleague that is homosexual, and he uses the F word, not the original F word, the new F word that, that is about sexual orientation. He uses it freely when talking about things or talking about or joking about some of his peers in his community. But it's not in an offensive way. I've see other people get very uncomfortable, which is understandable by him saying that. But for me, I would never be the type to say, no, you can't say that, or that's not right, because I'm not a part of that community. So if he wants to take back the power and take the sting out of the word, then I have to just accept that. It's the same thing with using the N word with African Americans. Like, it's been a long debate about whether black people should use it or black people shouldn't use it. You just take out the word completely. And I understand both sides. And I think the discussion that like Jay-Z and Oprah had about a years ago, when they had to agree to disagree, I understood both sides, where Oprah was saying, well, there were my ancestors, my great grandfather, they were called this word negatively, and back in the day, and they were shot, hung, dragged, killed, and called boy, and called the N word, and it's just a negative, demeaning word that no one should use. Understand that point, and I also understand the point that Jay-Z was talking about. Is like, yes, all those things happen, and as the further generation get out, they've taken back the power of the word. So with saying the word, it doesn't sting as much. Saying the word we're giving it a new meaning. We're owning it for ourselves. So I understand and get both terms. So in the last part of our question of how should we as counselors and professionals in the profession combat it, like I said the first time, I think first we have to start with ourselves and take an inventory of ourselves to see what type of negative inflammatory language do we use, and try to correct that first. Like for me, with saying fat and things like that, and pass on to the next generation, I need to take account of that and change my language so I can stop this cycle now. The second thing I think we should do is understand that it will never be stopped, but to try to educate as many people as we can, figure out whether it's for malice or just for a lack of knowledge, like I did with my friend. If you hear something that isn't right, you can say it, but nice, professionally. Just let them know that I'm just letting you aware, not saying that you're trying to change them, but just let people know that they're aware. And if it's offensive or if it's to you, you can let them know that as well. And third, I just feel like we just have to have understanding that everybody doesn't have to understand everything. I hear often, especially, it just happened actually in one of my recent groups at work. It was a guy that wasn't African American, and it was in talking, and he said the N word, and it wasn't in the ER, it was in with the A. But I had to let him know, I don't think that's appropriate, especially in this setting. I can't discuss or tell you what to do outside of here, but in our setting, in our small group, that's offensive. And we went on and on like that, and he explained, oh no, I didn't mean it, I'm not a racist, I didn't mean it that way, it's just that I hear it all the time, it's just a part of my vernacular. And I think we had a very good discussion, even along with the other guys in my group, of saying that we understand why you say it, and we're not angry we're not angry right now to say it, but you have to just understand that if you're not in the community that it was used negative towards, that you shouldn't say it. So I think part of just let people understand that. I understand you hear it all the time with any type of the language, but if you're not a part of that group, part of that sect, that maybe you just can't use it. You can't look for a reason of why. It's just a no. And I think that's sometimes what people have an issue with being okay with. So other than just trying to educate where we can, try to teach people that if you do hear it, you can stand up for yourself, but don't let it go further physically, and just let it be able to go, let it go, and know that they're just our words, and you have to take back the power yourself and just move on from it. Those are some things we can do. Talk to y'all later. Bye.